bed goes up, bed goes down, bed goes up, bed goes down, bed goes up, bed goes down, bed goes up, bed goes down.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Joey's Retro Handhelds. I'm Joey, and today we're going to be taking a look at two very popular Windows handhelds, the Asus ROG Ally and the GPD Win 4. I've had my Ally since release date. I actually went and got it right on the release date as soon as Best Buy opened. So that should tell you how excited I was to get this device. And since then, I've been using it quite a bit, almost daily you could say. And one of my biggest complaints about the Ally is the size. For me personally, it's just a bit too big. I would rather have something smaller. And that's really where the GPD Win 4 came in for me. Because it seems like for any of the new devices coming out, like the Ayaneo KUN, which I still don't know how to pronounce and I'm not going to even try, or the Lenovo Legion Go, they just continually get bigger, and that is not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a smaller Windows handheld device that isn't going to be cumbersome to hold or have any issues like that. The only other issue I have when it comes to the Ally is worrying about the SD card reader just failing one day. Thankfully, I haven't had any issues at all so far and been using the SD card in it since day one, but it's always in the back of my mind that, hey, is this the day that it's going to fail? And if so, what do I do then? But otherwise, I love the Ally. It's been a big upgrade for me over the Steam Deck in screen as well as performance. And those were two things that mattered for me. But the Ally solves a lot of what I'm looking for. But like I keep saying, I wanted something smaller. And that's where the GPD Win 4 comes in, because it is quite a bit smaller than the Ally. It has a smaller screen, smaller buttons, smaller overall in every way, shape, or form. And so I was super excited to get this in and compare it to the Ally and just see which one I would like better as my daily driver. Looking at the size difference between the two, and it's a massive difference. Where the Ally is tall, the Win 4 is thick. For me, the thickness of the GPD Win 4 ended up bothering me a lot more than the height of the Ally. I could comfortably hold the Ally, and it ended up not being a concern in the long run. But with the Win 4, I found it hard to actually find a good position to hold it. It's heavy, and that thickness is hard to deal with, but the actual placement of my hands became just an issue. If we look down at the bottom of both sides, there's a little lip here, where the menu button is on one side and the lanyard hole is on the other. That kind of digs into your palm depending on how you hold it. And with how I personally hold it, that's all the time. I tried other ways to hold the device, even talked to others that have had it and tried it, and just see how I can hold it like maybe they are, but their way didn't hold up for longer periods of time. It gets a little uncomfortable after a certain amount of time. And so you end up having something that isn't very comfortable. But then you have the issue with the actual heat. And the right side of this device is uncomfortably warm at higher TDPs, or if you use this device for longer than 30 minutes. The Ally, on the other hand, doesn't have that issue. It just wants you to relearn how to actually hold a handheld. You're basically palm first and then wrap around, but once you get used to it, and that took about 5 minutes on release day, it's comfortable. I couldn't get used to the Win 4 at all. Looking at the buttons, the GPD Win 4 has compact everything. The face buttons are very small, same with start and select, and the stick tops aren't very good, which means you need something like the Skull & Co grips that I have here. Further on the sticks, there's a massive dead zone issue on the Win 4, and it was something I noticed immediately. Despite not being the person who knew much about dead zones or cared about them, or was able to notice them in the past on any of my devices. One of the first games I tried was Mario Kart Double Dash, and I noticed immediately that the dead zone was just awful, and it made it actually tough to play any games with. There's been reports that the Ally has an issue with dead zone as well, but I haven't seen it on mine. It's 100% possible that it actually does exist on mine as well, but maybe just not to the extent that the Win 4 has that issue. The D-pad on the Win 4, however, is really good and enjoyable, but it's a bit hard to use comfortably with how you hold the device. On the Ally side, we have the full analog sticks and much larger buttons. The D-pad isn't as good as the Win 4 on the Ally, but it's still serviceable. And it's actually a bit more comfortable to use with how the device is. I will say right now that it's night and day for usage for me. The Ally is just that much better for actual gaming, and it feels like a gaming device. For some reason, the Win 4 feels like gaming was an afterthought. Besides the D-pad, I'm not exactly sure where else the Win 4 excels compared to the Ally in terms of build quality and comfort so far. I get what GPD was going for with the PlayStation Vita style look and triggers and all of that, but they just aren't great to use, and especially for PC games. I find the actual construction of them to be just a bit cheap as well. As a whole, I'm pretty let down with the build quality, comfort, ergonomics, and all of that when it comes to the GPD Win 4. The Ally isn't the standard by any stretch of the imagination, but in comparison to the GPD Win 4, the Ally is just miles ahead in terms of all of that. And I just find it to be a lot more comfortable to hold, as well as just feels like an actual gaming device, which is a weird thing to say when we're talking about these two devices. But I think you'd have to have it in your hands to know what I mean. The Steam Deck, however, is still my top choice when it comes to being comfortable and ergonomics. It's better than both of these, but the Ally is pretty close to the Steam Deck. Let's talk about some of the unique features for both of these devices. The Win 4, of course, has the nice cool slide out keyboard, has the mouse nub on the right, and then you have a USB-A port that's somewhere on the top if my finger can find it. It also has a toggle on the left side for you to go between mouse mode and gamepad mode. I've just stayed in gamepad mode and haven't had any issues. I assume mouse mode is probably for some of those older games where you want to do a point and click adventure and use the mouse a bit more. There's also a second USB-C port on the Win 4. There's one on the bottom and one on the top, where the Ally only has one. Let's talk about the keyboard first, and it's a bit awkward to actually use. Now, obviously, you're not going to be writing the next best novel on this device, but I also found it to be a bit cumbersome to use for even the smallest of sentences or commands. There's also just no real good way to hold the device and use the keyboard at the same time. I found it was best to hold it with your non-dominant hand and then type one-handed with your dominant hand. But that's a bit awkward, and I'm assuming probably not what they actually wanted. I ended up just using the on-screen keyboard for a lot of what I needed because it was just easier. To type, you have to extend the screen, type, and then close the screen. And if you keep doing that over and over and over, it gets a little bit cumbersome. This idea sort of extends to the nub as well. Let me get this out of the way now. The Steam Deck trackpads, for me, have been the best way to navigate Windows so far. It was easy, I didn't have to fiddle around with anything, and it was just comfortable and worked. The Ally has no trackpads and uses the sticks to navigate, but I'm also going to say this right now. I find it super easy to navigate around using the Ally's full-size sticks, and only consider the Steam Deck as slightly ahead in that department. Going in, you would think it was awful to use the sticks to navigate around in Windows, but for me, it took no time at all to get used to it, but it made it a non-issue. I was able to navigate a lot quicker and everywhere that I wanted with the Ally than the Win 4, for example. So this brings me back to the Win 4. I'm just not a big fan of the nub. I've actually never been a fan of the nub at all, and no, this isn't a Seinfeld joke. Even on the IBM Lenovo laptops, and I just don't like it. And having it here didn't change anything at all either. I don't find it very accurate, and I just had a hard time getting used to it. The keyboard and nub are both of the two major selling points of this device, and neither of them are hitting for me personally. Now, the good thing is you could just close it and you wouldn't even know that they were there. You don't have to use the keyboard or the nub if you don't want to. But with these Switch style sticks, it ends up being really tough to navigate around Windows. And so it's not really a good experience either using the nub or the sticks to navigate around on the Win 4. But on the plus side, the USB-A and USB-C ports that you get on the Win 4 are extremely useful. And I actually made use of both of those during my time of testing it and playing around with the device. That's something that I wish that maybe other devices would have, although apparently the newer Win 4 doesn't have that USB-A port anymore, and it's now an Oculink port. So it's gone. Look, by this point, I get it. You think this is a complete teardown of the GPD Win 4, and I'm just here to completely go on it about all the things that it does wrong or bad, and just come out as Ally as the winner. I've gone out of my way to see if there was something I was missing about this device, as I wanted to see where I could actually see it fit into my daily life. Honestly, you should see some of the Discord messages I've sent to other reviewers, pleading them to help me here in understanding where I might be missing something that makes this device a lot better than the Ally, because I would love to switch over. I want the Win 4 to be better. I love the size of it. I love the form factor. This, spec-wise, all of it on paper is exactly what I'm looking for in a device. So I'm pretty disappointed that it just isn't hitting the mark for any of it for me. Because honestly, from here, all we can do is get into the screen, the audio, and the software. And from all three, the Ally is just better. And that isn't even me just making an opinion, that is a factual statement. The Ally just has better screen, better audio, and better software. And so there's almost no point in me comparing the Ally to the Win 4 in those three categories. I'm trying to find positives here for the Win 4 in comparison because I would really like to just keep this device instead of the Ally, but I'm having a tough time in finding any of them. And that's pretty unfortunate to me because I want this device. On the software side, they both run Windows 11, and on my two devices, I'm running Windows 11 Pro. So I upgraded from the home version because I wanted remote desktop. They both can run the same software for TDP management in anything you want, from Handheld Companion to some of the other versions. And there really isn't much separation between the two when it comes to software as a whole. So moving away from that, and we have the screen, and obviously the Ally has a better screen. It has 120 Hz variable refresh rate, and it's just a clearer image. It just looks a lot better. I don't have to fiddle around with changing the hertz on the display to match the frame rate of the game I'm playing, thanks to VRR on the Ally. But it was actually during the display comparison that I was starting to warm up to the idea of a bigger screen than the Win 4, and completely contrary to what I actually thought I wanted in a Windows handheld. Ask me that question again every day, and my answer will likely change depending on the day. And so we get to audio, and I made sure to search around here to see if anybody else was having the same experience, and it seems to be a yes. But there's some massive crackling or static noise coming out of the right front speaker that actually really affects the audio quality. Here, let's have a listen. So you can see that's super frustrating. However, the Ally has had audio crackling issues as well. I had it happen frequently in Diablo 4, for example. It was the only game that I saw it in, and it could mean it was the actual game or something else going on. I did see a lot of times where the TDP was lower than expected at something like a 10 watt, and the game was expecting a lot higher, and then audio crackling would exist. But if you have the TDP at the right numbers for the game, I actually haven't seen audio crackling in any other game besides Diablo. Either way, the Win 4 has it happen constantly. It doesn't matter which game, what browser, what anything, it just keeps happening. It's a mainstay, and that's really annoying. I'm kinda stumped here. I really wanted the Win 4 to be better than the Ally. Really, there isn't anything else coming out in the near future or that exists already that is the same form factor as the Win 4 and is the same specs and all of that pricing. and something that I could easily get. The Win 4 is kind of it right now. On paper, it does everything that I want and need. And unfortunately, the newer devices, like I said before, are just going to be bigger than the Ally. So there's nothing that's in between both of these devices that is somewhere in a lower price range by a few dollars or even the same price that you can just get. And we're not going to talk about Aya and Neo here because while their devices are definitely smaller than the Ally, their pricing is just out of whack. And I'm not paying what they're asking for a boutique experience with a half battery life or whatever they're doing. It's just not great. And so in reality, the Win 4 is something that I'm going to be parting ways with pretty soon. It's just not comfortable. It's not ergonomic. It doesn't seem to prioritize games in any way, shape, or form. And so it's just not something for me. And again, for those that think that I just came in scripting this to make the Ally better than the Win 4 for me for whatever reason, which by the way, I have no affiliate links for either of these. There's nothing for me to gain on either of these devices. It's just not the truth. And if you were in Discord when you saw me order the Win 4, you saw exactly how excited I was for this device to arrive. I was looking at eGPUs, I was considering swapping my entire desktop. I was ready to just go all in on this device and that was it. I even woke up at 5 a.m. on the morning it was delivered because Canada Post didn't tell me it was actually delivered the day before, and so I ran to the mailbox and went and got it. That's how excited I was. I was ready to make my wife angry in the morning just to go get this device and play with it earlier than by a few hours. I haven't even talked about the lack of regional support, the higher price tag, and all of the other fun stuff, and I say fun sarcastically, that comes with dealing with an overseas Chinese company for a higher price tag device like the Win 4. There's a lot more that you can say and go into about it, but there's just no point anymore. For actually playing games, the Ally is just better. It's not even close in my opinion. And so the Ally is still, as much as I do want to replace it, going to be my #1 Windows handheld going forward until something else arrives. And that might sound like a shot at the Ally, but it isn't. I actually really like the Ally. But again, I want something that's smaller. The problem is everything that's smaller is a huge concession in different areas. It's either specs or price or something else. And so if they can find a way to just take the Ally, shrink it by a little bit, that's perfection for me. That's all I want. Let me know in the comments below. Do you have both of these devices? Have you tried both of these devices? I'm curious what your thoughts were. Am I in line with what you were thinking? Am I completely off base? But for me, these were my thoughts and why I wanted to make the video. So that'll be it for this one. Don't forget to like and sub to help the channel grow, and hope you all have a good one.